If my meeting had ended 5 minutes later, I would never have known anything that night. I would have come home, opened the door, and, like always, gone straight to the kitchen. But that evening, everything was different. I parked the car in the driveway and sat there for a few seconds. The lights in the house were on. Yellow light was spilling out from the living room window. There were people inside. I could hear voices, too. I looked at my watch. 8:12. I wasn't supposed to be here at this time. Today's meeting was supposed to run long. At least, that's what everyone believed. I picked up my bag and stepped out of the car. Cold air brushed against my face. My feet moved automatically toward the porch. The door wasn't fully closed. It was slightly open, and through that small gap, the voices from inside were drifting out. At first, I thought the TV might be on, but the next moment, I recognized my sister's voice. She was laughing, that same loud laugh, the one she has when she's very confident about something. Then my mother's voice came. Soft. Just be careful, she shouldn't find out anything yet. My steps stopped right there. The strap of my bag slipped slightly off my shoulder, but I didn't fix it, because at that exact moment Dad said, "Don't worry, Emma will be told at the end." Hearing my name felt like something hitting straight into my chest. I looked at the door. If I had taken just one more step, I could have walked inside, right in front of everyone. But I stayed where I was, because curiosity had already awakened. And sometimes, curiosity is more powerful than fear. I heard a chair scrape inside. My sister spoke again. "Anyway, she won't say no." Dad replied with a light chuckle. "When has Emma ever said no?" There was no joke in his voice. There was certainty. The kind of certainty that is built over many years. I took a slow breath, and suddenly an old memory flashed in my mind. My last year of high school, I had been selected for a summer program in Boston. I had prepared for it for months, but that same week, my sister needed a car, and money at home was tight. Mom had said then, "You're the sensible one, Emma. You'll understand." I had given up the program, because at that time I believed it was the right thing to do for the family. Standing on the porch, I slowly returned to the present. The conversation inside was still going on. Mom's voice came again. "When everything is finalized, we'll tell her." My sister replied, and until then, she shouldn't know anything. Laughter echoed through the room again. Short, light, but to my ears, it sounded very loud. I placed my hand on the doorframe. The wood was cold. Only one question was circling in my mind. What were they planning about me? Because one thing was clear now. This was not an ordinary conversation. This was something that was being hidden from me. And maybe I had already heard everything I was never supposed to hear. I looked at the door again. If I pushed it just a little more, the whole truth would be right in front of me. But at that exact moment, my sister's voice came again from inside. "Just remember one thing. Emma should never find out that all of this was decided beforehand." Those words slipped through the crack of the door and reached my ears and stayed there. For a few seconds, I didn't move at all, as if the ground beneath my feet had suddenly become heavier. My palm was still resting against the doorframe. I could feel the cold surface of the wood against my fingers. Inside, a chair moved again. Someone lifted a glass. Then Mom spoke. "Everything has to be done properly. If she finds out beforehand, then..." She didn't finish the sentence. But I didn't need to hear the rest. My sister replied with a laugh. "Relax, Mom. Emma doesn't suspect anything." My breathing slowed. It was strange. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was very calm, as if some part inside me had suddenly awakened. Dad spoke again inside. "Let the right time come. Then we'll tell her." Mom asked, "And what if she asks questions?" My sister's voice came immediately. "She won't ask." That same soft laughter filled the room again. The same confidence. As if my decision had already been made. As if in my place there could never be anyone else. Only that Emma, who always understands. Standing on the porch, I slowly straightened up. My shoulders suddenly felt heavy. And at that moment, another memory surfaced. Winter, 2 years ago. I had saved my first big amount of money. After months of overtime shifts, I had thought, maybe now I'll finally do something for myself. But that same week, my sister had come up with a new business idea. And then that same sentence had been repeated. Emma is practical. I hadn't said anything then either. Standing outside the door, I slowly exhaled. The conversation inside had started again. Mom said, "Just make sure all the documents are ready." My sister asked, "And Emma?" Dad replied, "She'll be told at the end." There was complete certainty in his voice, as if he already knew what my answer would be. Something tightened in my throat. This wasn't trust. This was habit. A habit built over many years. Through the crack of the door, I saw a faint light falling inside. If I had taken just one step forward, I could have seen everything. Their faces, their expressions. But I didn't, because at that moment I realized something. Sometimes before seeing the truth, it's more important to hear it. And right now, I was listening. Then my sister's voice came again. "By the way, Emma will come home late today, right?" Mom said, "Yes, her meeting is long." A faint smile appeared on my lips. They truly believed. I wasn't here. The air on the porch felt a little colder. I adjusted the bag on my shoulder. And just then, Dad's voice came again from inside. "By the way, when should we tell Daniel?" My heart skipped a beat. Daniel, my fiancé. There was a brief silence in the room. Then my sister said, "He'll find out later too." Mom said softly, "Just make sure this doesn't reach Emma right now." My fingers tightened around the doorframe. Now, this wasn't just curiosity. It was something else. A question that was slowly becoming clearer. What exactly were they planning? And why had Daniel's name come up in it? I slowly lifted my head. The light inside the house was still the same. The voices were the same. But something inside me had changed. Because now I could feel it. This conversation wasn't over yet. The real part was probably about to begin. And if I kept standing right there, then maybe in the very next moment, I would hear something that, once heard, would make it impossible for anything to ever be the same again. My fingers were still resting against the doorframe. I could feel a slight dampness on the surface of the wood, probably because of the cold air. But my palm had grown a little cold too. Inside, no one spoke for a few seconds, as if everyone was thinking about the same thing. Then Mom's voice came. "We'll tell Daniel later. There's no need for it right now." My heartbeat sped up again, because now this wasn't just about me. Now Daniel's name had also entered the conversation. My sister immediately asked, "But what if Emma talks to him before that?" Dad replied calmly, "Emma trusts him, and Daniel is a sensible guy." A faint uneasiness spread inside me. This conversation was slowly moving in a direction where even I couldn't understand what exactly they were hiding. Then my sister's voice came again. "Anyway, if everything goes according to plan, she won't even get the chance to refuse." My breath caught for a moment. She won't get the chance to refuse? What did that mean? I slightly lowered my head and looked at the light coming through the crack. Just one small step, and I could walk inside and stand in front of everyone. I could ask them what they were planning about me. But right now, I wanted to listen, no matter what the truth was. Mom said, "Just make sure everything is done properly." My sister laughed. "Relax, Mom. Emma always makes the right decision for the family." My lips slowly pressed together. That was the same sentence I had heard for years. Emma is sensible. Emma is practical. Emma won't say no. Standing on the porch, I kept breathing slowly. But now several memories were spinning in my mind at once. Every time someone had said, "Emma will understand." Every time I had nodded and agreed. And every time I had believed that maybe it was the right thing to do. Inside, I heard a chair move. Dad had probably stood up. He said, "Anyway, this is for her own good." A faint laugh rose inside me. But it wasn't a happy one. It was the laugh of understanding. Because that's what people often say when they want to make someone else's decision themselves. Mom asked, "So, should we set the date?" My heartbeat suddenly accelerated. A date? For what? My sister immediately said, yes, the sooner the better. I heard papers moving in the room. Maybe someone had opened a file. Then Dad said, we just have to bring Daniel in at the right time. My eyes narrowed slightly. Daniel. His name again. Now it was clear. He was going to be part of this plan.
But how? And why?
My sister's voice came again, this time a little softer. Emma won't even realize that all of this was decided beforehand. Light laughter echoed through the room again, and, at that moment, something inside me changed. The fear was slowly disappearing. In its place, another feeling was rising.
Clear. Cold.
As if my mind was now catching every word carefully. Because now I wasn't just listening. I was understanding. And the more I understood, the clearer it became that this wasn't a small decision. This was something that was going to affect my life directly. I took a deep breath. And at that moment, my sister's voice came again from inside. There's just one thing we still need to decide. A few seconds of silence. Then she said, how exactly are we going to tell Emma at the end? My sister's question hung in the room for a few seconds. I loosened my grip slightly on the doorframe. Inside, I heard papers moving again, as if someone was looking through a file on the table. Then Mom said softly, we won't tell her directly. Let everything be decided first. Dad made a small sound in agreement. When everything is finalized, then we'll talk. That word stuck in my ears. Finalized. Which meant something was already being decided. And my name was part of it. But no one had told me anything. My sister spoke again. What if she asks questions? Mom replied, Emma is practical. She'll understand. Something inside me slowly began to harden. That was the same sentence I had heard for many years. Every time a decision was made for me, instead of by me, a chair moved again inside. Dad had probably stood up. He said, anyway, this is for her own good. A faint smile appeared on my lips. But it wasn't warm at all. Because that's what people often say when they are deciding someone else's life for them. My sister's voice came from inside. So then, should we fix the date? My breathing suddenly became a little faster. The date. That word again. A date for what? A few seconds later, Dad said, next month would be right. Mom immediately replied, yes, everything will be ready before that. Questions began spinning rapidly in my mind. What preparation? And for what? I heard pages being flipped inside. My sister said, what if Emma finds out this was all planned beforehand? Dad answered immediately, she won't find out. His voice was completely calm, as if he was absolutely certain about it. Suddenly, a strange feeling rose inside me. It wasn't trust. It was habit. A habit built over years. That in the end Emma would do whatever everyone wanted. The air on the porch felt even colder now. I pulled my bag slightly higher on my shoulder, and at that moment, Mom's voice came again from inside. When should we tell Daniel? My heart stopped for a moment. That name again. Daniel. My fiancé. My sister replied immediately. We'll tell him later too. Dad asked. Won't he get suspicious? My sister laughed.
No.
Emma shares everything with him. Mom said softly. Just make sure Emma doesn't find out anything right now. Light laughter filled the room again. But now that laughter felt different to me. As if someone had dropped a curtain in front of me. And behind it, the real story was unfolding. I looked at the door. If I pushed it just a little,
I could walk inside.
Right in front of everyone. I could ask them
what they were planning about me.
But at that moment, another thought came into my mind. If I walked in right now, they would change the subject, and I would never know the truth. So I stayed where I was.
Quiet.
Listening. Because now I could feel it. The real part hadn't even arrived yet. And maybe, in the very next moment, someone would say a word. That would finally tell me what this entire plan was really about. Suddenly, my sister's voice came from inside. So it's settled then. A few seconds of silence. Then she said, this time, Emma will cover the entire expense. Emma will handle the entire expense this time. My sister's voice slipped through the crack of the door and stopped straight in my chest. For a few seconds, no one spoke inside, as if everyone considered that statement completely normal. Then Dad said in a very calm voice, "It won't be difficult to explain it to her." I felt a slight tightness in my throat. Explain. That word wasn't new for me, because it often meant the decision had already been made. Now Emma simply had to agree. Mom's voice came from inside. "We just have to tell her the right way." My sister laughed. "She won't refuse." Soft laughter spread through the room again. In my ears, the sound felt a little louder. I removed my hand from the doorframe and took a slow breath. Now things were becoming clearer. They were planning something, and the cost of that plan
Was going to fall on me.
But one question was still left. The expense of what? I heard a chair move inside. Someone had probably sat down. Then Mom said, "Just make sure it feels like it's her decision." My fingers slowly curled into a fist. Hearing that, an old memory flashed inside me. 3 years ago, when my sister needed a new apartment. Back then, the same thing had been said. "Emma, it's your decision if you want to help." But the air in the room had carried so much pressure that saying no had never really been an option. Standing on the porch, I slowly returned to the present. The conversation inside continued. My sister said, "Anyway, Emma likes big events." Dad asked, "How big will the guest list be?" My sister answered without thinking, "At least 200 people." My breath stopped for a moment. 200? This wasn't a small plan. Mom said, "We've already looked at the venue." I heard papers turning. My sister said, "Rosewood Hall would be perfect." I recognized the name instantly. One of the most expensive venues in the city. Dad asked, "How much is the deposit?" My sister replied, 6,000. The room went silent for a few seconds. Then Mom said, "Emma will handle it." Something inside me slowly grew colder. Now, this wasn't just suspicion anymore. The picture was becoming clear. They were planning a big event, and the financial center of that entire plan was me. My sister said, "We just have to tell her at the right time." Dad replied, "And by then, everything will be finalized." My eyes remained fixed on the crack of the door. I could see the light inside, but not their faces. Maybe that was better, because if I had seen their faces, I might have walked in right then and asked everything that was spinning inside my mind. But I stayed where I was, because now I wasn't just listening. I was understanding, and the more I understood, the clearer another truth became. This wasn't the first time. It was just the first time. I was finding out beforehand. Suddenly, my sister's voice came again from inside. "There's one more thing," Dad asked. "What?" My sister paused for a few seconds, then said, "Daniel is going to love this idea." Her words lingered in the air. My heart suddenly began beating faster, because now this wasn't just my family's plan anymore. Now Daniel's name was part of it too. "My fiancé," Dad asked immediately. "Have you talked to him about it?" My breath caught slightly. Standing outside the door, I became completely still. My sister replied, "Not yet, but he'll like it." Mom said softly, "Just make sure Emma doesn't find out first." The room fell silent for a few seconds. Then my sister spoke again. "What if Daniel says something to her before that?" Dad replied in a very calm tone, "He won't say anything." A faint uneasiness spread inside me, because that certainty felt strange to me. Why were they so sure? A chair moved lightly inside. Someone had probably leaned closer to the table. Then Mom said, "Daniel is sensible. He'll understand the situation." My fingers tightened again around the doorframe. The situation? What situation? My sister laughed and said, "And anyway, if everything goes according to plan, Emma won't even get the chance to refuse." A cold wave spread through my chest. Won't get the chance to refuse. The meaning of those words was very clear. Something was being decided, in which my opinion would come later, or maybe not at all. The air on the porch now felt even colder. I adjusted the strap of my bag slightly. but my eyes remained fixed on the light coming through the crack of the door. Dad said from inside, "We just have to make sure Emma feels like it's her own decision." My lips pressed together slowly. That sentence, I had heard it before, many times. Every time a big decision had been made. And later I had been told that I had chosen the right thing. I heard papers turning again inside. My sister said, "Then let's set the timeline." Mom asked, "Is the venue confirmed?" "Yes," my sister replied immediately. "Rosewood Hall is available next month." My heart started beating faster again. Rosewood Hall, the place where the biggest events in the city were held. Dad asked, "Total cost?" Looking at the papers, my sister replied, "Around 60,000. The room went silent for a few seconds. Then Mom said softly, "Emma will handle it." Suddenly, something inside me grew calm, as if my mind was now connecting every piece clearly. They were planning a big event, expensive, and the financial center of the entire plan was me. My sister spoke again. "There's just one thing left," Dad asked. "What?" There was a brief silence. Then she said, "How are we going to convince Emma?" Mom replied without hesitation, "We're not going to convince her." A faint silence spread through the room. Then Mom said in a very calm voice, "We'll tell her that it's necessary for the family." My fingers slowly relaxed. Now, this wasn't just suspicion. The truth was clear. They were expecting that I would do what I had always done, nod my head,
and agree.
But at that moment, another question rose in my mind. If Daniel was going to like this idea, then did he already know about this plan? That question kept echoing in my mind. Standing on the porch, I remained completely still for a few seconds. Inside the room, soft sounds rose again. Papers were being moved. Maybe someone was closing a file. Then my sister said, "So it's settled then?" Dad replied,
"Yes."
"Now, we just have to wait for the right time." Mom said softly, "And Emma must not find out anything yet." The same light laughter filled the room again. But this time, that laughter felt different to me, as if the curtain of a story was slowly lifting in front of me. I let out a slow breath. Now the question wasn't what they were doing. The question was what I was going to do. Because the truth was, if I opened the door right now and walked inside, then the same thing would probably happen. That had always happened before. They would say, "Emma, we're just thinking about the family." And slowly, the conversation would move in that direction, where, in the end, I would be the one nodding again. This pattern wasn't new. It had been happening for years. I slowly looked toward the porch steps. The night air was quiet. A car passed on the distant road. And at that moment, I realized something. Tonight, for the first time, I had found out beforehand. For the first time, I wasn't standing at the end of the story. I was standing at the beginning. Inside, my sister's voice came again. "By the way, when will Emma be back?" Mom replied, "Her meeting is long. It'll take a while." A faint smile appeared on my lips. They truly believed that I wasn't here, that I was still sitting in that meeting. And they also believed that they had plenty of time to hide the truth. I looked at the door one last time. The light inside was the same. The voices were the same. But inside me, everything had changed. Because now I had two choices. The first, go inside right now. Ask everyone. And let the same old argument begin again. The second, say nothing. Just listen. Understand. And wait for the right moment. I slowly removed my hand from the door. The cold surface of the wood slipped away from my fingers. As I stepped onto the porch stairs, the voices from inside the house became a little quieter. But those words were still echoing in my mind. Emma will handle it. Emma will understand. Emma won't refuse. I slowly began walking down the steps. With every step, a strange clarity was growing inside me. Because maybe for the first time, I was realizing something. People use us only as much as we allow them to. When I reached the car, I stood there for a few seconds. I looked back at the house. The same house, where for years I had accepted every decision, in the name of family. But tonight was different, because tonight, for the first time, I had heard something I was never supposed to hear. I was just about to open the car door when suddenly my phone screen lit up. A new message had arrived. The moment I saw the sender's name, my breath caught slightly. Daniel. His name was glowing on the screen. I stared at the phone for a few seconds. Strangely enough, just a few minutes ago, if his message had arrived, I would have smiled without thinking. But right now, there was a slight hesitation inside me. I slowly unlocked the screen. His message was short. Hey, did you reach home? That was all. No long message. No explanation. I took a deep breath. The phone was still in my hand, and the light from the house was still glowing behind my back. For a few seconds, I thought about what to reply. Then I typed,
Yes.
Just got home. I sent the message. Within a few seconds, the typing indicator appeared. Daniel was replying immediately. My heartbeat became slightly faster, because the same question was spinning in my mind again. Did he know about that plan? The phone vibrated again. A new message from him appeared. I talked to your parents today. My fingers froze on the screen. I felt a slight tightness in my chest. Parents. So they had spoken to him. I immediately read the next message. They were talking about some big idea. My breath caught slowly. Big idea. That was the exact phrase they had used inside the room. I leaned lightly against the car. The night air now felt colder. The phone vibrated again. Another message from Daniel appeared. They said they'll talk to you soon too. The conversation from inside the house flashed in my mind again. Emma will be told at the end. I slowly looked at the screen. Now I didn't know what to write. Should I tell him the truth? That I had just been standing outside the house and had heard everything? Or should I stay quiet? I thought for a few seconds. Then I typed, What did they tell you? For a moment, there was no reply. Then the phone vibrated again. Daniel wrote, They said nothing is final yet. I frowned slightly. Not final. Inside, they had said, they would tell me after everything was finalized. The phone vibrated again. Another message appeared. But honestly, it felt a little strange. My eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Strange? I immediately asked, Why? A few seconds passed. Then his reply came. Because they kept saying you'll handle it. Something inside me suddenly became calm. It was the same sentence. The same pattern. The same words I had heard just minutes ago, while standing outside the door. The phone vibrated again. Another message from Daniel appeared. Emma, do you know what they're talking about? I stared at the screen for a few seconds. Now I had two truths. One, the one I had just heard, and the other, the one Daniel was trying to understand. I slowly lifted my head and looked at the house. The same yellow light was still spilling from the window. Inside, the conversation was probably still going on. But now I had one more piece of information. Daniel wasn't part of that plan. At least not yet. I looked back at the phone. His question was still on the screen. Do you know what they're talking about? My fingers slowly moved over the keyboard. I was about to type my reply, when suddenly, the sound of the main door opening echoed from the house. I straightened up immediately. The porch light suddenly felt brighter. The door slowly opened, and my sister stepped outside. She had her phone in her hand. It looked like she was about to make a call. She hadn't seen me yet. I was standing near the car, half in the shadows. For a few seconds, she stood on the porch. Then she lifted the phone to her ear and called someone. Without realizing it, I held my breath. The night air was completely still, and in that silence, her voice was perfectly clear. Hey, yeah, everything is going well. She slowly walked closer to the porch railing. No, she doesn't know anything yet. My heartbeat started racing again. My fingers tightened around my phone. She continued, Yeah, we've planned everything. For a few seconds, she looked toward the street. Then she gave a light laugh. Don't worry, Emma will agree, like she always does. It felt like cold air filled my chest. That was the same sentence. The same certainty. The one the entire plan was built on. The person on the other side of the call probably asked something. My sister replied, Yeah, The venue is perfect. Then she said in a quieter voice, Rosewood Hall. My eyes narrowed slightly. Now, this wasn't just a family discussion. She was talking about the plan with someone else too. A few seconds later she said, Now it's just about the deposit. Then that same light laugh again. And Emma will handle that too. Something inside me became completely calm, as if everything had finally become crystal clear. This plan wasn't just an idea. It was already fully prepared. I was simply the last person to be told. The person on the phone probably joked about something. My sister laughed again. You don't know her. Emma always sacrifices for the family. Hearing that word, memories from many years flashed through my mind. Every moment, when I had believed I was doing the right thing. Every decision I had made for the family. And every time, people had assumed I would do the same again. My sister was still on the phone. Yeah, I'll invite her to dinner tomorrow,
she said.
Then we'll slowly start the conversation. My breathing became slightly heavier. So that was the plan. Dinner tomorrow. And then they would tell me, as if nothing had already been decided, as if my opinion actually mattered. The conversation on the phone began to end. My sister said, All right, we'll talk tomorrow. She ended the call. Then she turned. And at that exact moment she saw me. Her face changed instantly. Her eyes widened slightly. Emma? She said quietly. A few seconds of silence stretched between us. The porch light was shining on both of us. And in that light, I could clearly see what was going through her mind. She was wondering how much I had heard. I slowly closed the car door. My phone was still in my hand. She took one step toward me. When did you get here? Her voice was trying to sound normal, but I could clearly hear the hesitation. I looked at her for a few seconds. Then I said calmly, Just now. She stared at me for a moment, as if trying to read the answer from my face. Then she asked, You didn't hear anything, did you? Her words from the phone were still echoing in my mind. Emma always agrees. I looked into her eyes slowly, and, for the first time, a question rose in my mind. Were they expecting the same thing this time that they always had? And if they were, did they know that this time the story was not going to end the same way? My sister was still standing on the porch. Her eyes were fixed on my face. She was trying to understand how much I had heard, or maybe everything. The night air was completely quiet. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she tried to smile slightly. That same old smile, the one she used whenever she wanted to make an awkward moment feel normal. Come inside, she said. Mom and Dad are here too. Her tone was completely casual, as if everything was normal, as if nothing had been hidden. I looked toward the house. The same window, the same light, the same place where a few minutes earlier I had been standing outside the door listening to everything. I slowly shook my head. No, I said calmly. My sister's face stiffened slightly. Why? She asked. I thought for a few seconds. Then I said, Because if I go inside right now, the same thing will probably happen that always happens. She stayed silent. I continued, You'll explain some plan, and then everyone will look at me. My voice remained steady, and everyone will assume I'll agree. My sister opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. In the porch light, her face looked a little pale. For the first time, I realized something. The balance of power was changing, because this time, I wasn't standing at the end of the story. I was at the beginning. A faint sound came from inside the house. Maybe someone had moved a chair. My sister quickly said, Emma, you're overthinking this. I took a small breath. Maybe, I said. Then I looked into her eyes. But one thing is very clear to me now. She stayed silent. I said, People only use us, as much as we allow them to. Silence spread across the porch for a few seconds. Then I opened the car door. My sister's voice came immediately. Emma, wait. I stopped. But I didn't turn around. She asked quietly, Did you really hear everything? A faint smile appeared on my lips. I answered softly, enough for me to understand what I shouldn't do this time. I sat inside the car. The engine started. The headlights turned on. For a moment, the walls of the house lit up brightly, and in that light, I saw my sister. She was still standing on the porch. Maybe for the first time, she was realizing that this time the story wouldn't go the way it always had. I turned the car toward the road. In the rearview mirror, the house slowly grew smaller. And at that moment, I realized something. Sometimes the biggest decision is not winning an argument. Sometimes the biggest decision is simply stopping yourself from saying yes. And that night, for the first time,
I didn't say.
yes. If you've listened to the story until this point, then I want to ask you one question. Has it ever happened to you that people assumed you would always sacrifice for them? And have you ever broken that pattern? Share your experience in the comments. If you enjoy emotional stories like this, that reveal the truth of real life, then like the video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because here, we don't just tell stories.
We talk about those moments
When a person learns
to choose themselves again.